Hey, this is Dan with Pain Free You. Today, I'd like to introduce Barbara from Toronto, and she has volunteered to share her success story. And hopefully, it will inspire some people, show other people what's possible, and hopefully be inspirational and educational. So, thank you. I appreciate you, Barbara. Why don't you introduce yourself and take us on a little journey as to, where you've been, what happened, what you've tried, medical world, and when you found out about the mind body stuff, and then what seemed to work for you there. So thank you again.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dan. I am honored to be here to share my story. I've struggled with anxiety most of my life, and I believe it started when I was around 9 years old, and I have a few examples to share.
Hmm.
I I remember, checking under my bed in my closet before I got into bed. When I was 18, about a week before I started university, I was at a rock concert, and my husband and I, well, at the time he was my boyfriend, we yeah, so I was there with my boyfriend, and all of a sudden I started getting chest pains, and I started to panic, and I said, we got to leave. So we left the concert early, got home. Next day I went to see my doctor, and he checked me over, and he couldn't see anything or find anything, and he just prescribed some Mylanta, which is like Pepto-Bismol, and within a week I felt better. Then I completed 1 year university, and then I decided to change my career into nursing. 3 months into nursing, I had a panic attack,
Hmm.
and my boyfriend came to pick me up from residence. And, the following day, I went to see my doctor, and, I've been seeing him for 4 years at that point, and he knew me so well, he recommended that I go for individual and group counseling,
Okay.
which I did for about 2 or 3 months. And then I felt better again. Then I, um, I guess my early 30s, I was in a car accident. And thank goodness it wasn't very serious, but I had a little bit of whiplash.
Hmm.
A few days later, my lower back, left side, hip area started to hurt.
Okay.
And someone recommended that I go and see a chiropractor. So I did, and I saw the chiropractor 3 times a week for 2 years. I,
Wow.
yeah, I know that sounds extensive. It is extensive. And I'm not sure why it went for that period of time, but my husband said to me, you know what? I don't know why you're going to see a chiropractor. He's not doing anything for you. And I took him seriously, and I said, okay, I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore.
Right.
Then, in my late 30s, 40s, 50s, early 60s, I had back pain on and off. I developed had heart pain, heart palpitations,
Okay.
stomach pains, abdominal pain, pelvic pain, on and off for years and years. And, I went to the doctor, had lots of blood work done, x-rays, ultrasounds. I
Right.
had 10 endoscopies, 3 colonoscopies. They all turned out relatively normal, like there wasn't
Right.
anything of significance. During that time, again, stressful time at work, I started to see a social worker on and off again as stressful things came up. And so again, that was just intermittent. It
Right.
wasn't for long periods of time. I also felt uh, when my daughter went to university, she was there for 5 years in residence. And so when she first left, I really missed her, and I started feeling a little bit depressed.
Okay.
And at that time, I was exercising in the basement, and my husband said to me, why don't you join a fitness club? That way, you'll get you out of the house, and you'll meet other people, and you'll be around other people. It might make you feel better. He was right again, and I did that, and I felt a lot better after that. And, you know, just my anxiety just my anxiety, I felt around that time very nervous, a lot of tension,
Sure.
heart palpitations, on and off again. I thought, I can't take this anymore. I got to do something. So I resorted to self-help books. And two books in particular that helped me was a book called From Panic to Power from Lucinda Bassett and What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter.
Right.
And they just helped me deal with my personality type. I'm a perfectionist. I'm a people pleaser. I set high expectations for myself. I had a few guilt feelings. So they helped me deal with all of that and also how to speak to myself in a positive way because I had a lot of negative thoughts. So again, those books helped me for a period of time. But again, my symptoms of back pain and pelvic pain, abdominal, stomach, and all that kept coming up on and off throughout
Okay.
this whole time. Then, I still kept seeing the chiropractor, just only when my back pain was severe enough to go and see a chiropractor, I would go. It wasn't like before where I went 3 times a week for 2 years. And so while I was waiting in the office, I picked up a magazine and I started reading the story about a 20-year-old woman who had back pain, severe back pain for 2 years, and she was bedridden. And somehow she got in touch with Dr. Sarno,
Right.
TMS, the TMS world, and she actually was treated by him. And within, I think, 2 to 4 months, her back pain was completely gone.
It's awesome.
Yeah. And I thought, oh my gosh, like, what did he do? Apparently with no medication and no other kind of special treatments. I thought, wow, this sounds really interesting. So I ordered his books. I read all of his 4 books. At that time, this was around late 50s. And I I believed everything he said. It made total sense, but for some reason, I didn't take it any further. I didn't, follow his recovery program or anything like that. I just, maybe
Right.
at the time, I felt that, you know what, I've been dealing with this stuff on and off for years. Like, what does it matter? So I just didn't take it any further.
Okay.
And then after that, I guess everything came to a head Christmas Day 2022. So just about a year and a half ago or more. I was having breakfast with my husband on Christmas Day, and for some reason, every time I swallowed, it hurt in between my shoulder blades. And this happened for a couple of weeks. We were in Naples, Florida at the time, so I decided to go and see a doctor.
Hmm.
And he said, based on your symptoms, because I also had a little bit of burning in my chest, he said, it could be acid reflux. And he said, I'm going to prescribe some PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, that are supposedly supposed to is for
Sure.
acid
The
reflux.
reflux.
Yeah. And he said, I'm also going to prescribe a liquid medication that will coat your esophagus because he said, um, what you may have could be life-threatening.
Oh,
So,
great.
of course, that scared the heck out of me.
Sure.
I thought, oh my goodness. And so he said, you know what, I'm going to make an appointment for you to see a gastroenterologist. So 2 weeks later in Naples, Florida, I went to see the GI and he said, you know what, I think we should do a endoscopy. I can see you this Friday. I thought, wow, because if I had gone back to Canada, I would have had to wait at least 4 to 6 months. So
Right.
I said, sure, I'll pay for it. Let's do it. So he did the endoscopy. Nothing of significance was found. Well, they found some polyps in my stomach, but they were benign. And he said, I would like you to stay on the PPIs for 2 months and then come and see me for a follow-up. And I said, okay. About a week later, the pain in between my shoulder blades disappeared. And so I stopped the PPIs on my own and I did not go for a follow-up checkup because I was feeling better.
Right.
So we normally stay in Florida for the winter months. So we came back in, well, what happened? No, I'm sorry. I'm a little bit ahead of myself here. So in May, well, we came back from Florida and I went to see my nurse practitioner and I told her what happened. And she said, you know what? And that at that time too, my pelvic pain returned. And so she said, you know what? We've done so many ultrasounds, nothing, there were no, positive, like everything was normal. So
Hmm.
let's take it a step further and let's do a CT scan. Sure. So they did that in May of last year,
Hmm.
and they diagnosed me with diverticulosis, which is some form of bowel condition that I'm not going to go into detail about. And but it's not life-threatening, and just increase the fiber in your diet. Okay. Then in August of last year, I woke up in the middle of the night with severe abdominal or bowel pain, went to the washroom. I don't know if I can say this, but there was blood in my stool. And so I said, David, we got to go to emergency. Go to emergency. The doctor did a bunch of tests, couldn't find anything. The results of my CT scan was at that same hospital, so he was able to bring it up and look at it.
Hmm.
So as a result of that scan, he said, you know what, I think you have diverticulitis, which is an infection of that area,
Okay.
bowels. So he recommended some treatments, which I followed. I got better. And a couple of weeks later, I went to my GI, who uh, I told him about the symptoms I had. And he said, you know what, based on the symptoms that you had, it was not diverticulitis. It was probably something you ate or a virus. I said, oh, okay, that's even better.
Hmm.
So October last year rolls around. My husband had to go to Europe on a business trip, and I was supposed to meet him there. Well, I did meet him there. However, about 3 or 4 days prior to flying out to meet my husband, I started feeling that pain in between my shoulder blades again, and with a little bit of burning back there too. So I had some PPIs left over from the doctor that prescribed them in January. So I started
Right.
taking those again on my own, which I shouldn't have done, but I did anyway. And I flew to England and London, England, and we toured. Then we hopped on a cruise ship. And while I was on the cruise ship, my symptoms got a little bit worse, more burning in my chest, in my throat, in my mouth. Went to see the doctor on the ship. He prescribed more PPIs and some Pepto-Bismol. Felt a little bit better, but I was enjoying myself too, so maybe it kept my mind off it, so that's why I was feeling better.
Hmm.
And then when I came back, I went to see my nurse practitioner. I told her what happened. She said, yeah, it sounds like acid reflux. We'll keep you on the PPIs. And so, I tried two different PPIs and my symptoms did not get better at all. They were constant. The PPIs were doing nothing. And I said to her, I told her this, and I said, you know what? I'd like to have another endoscopy. So I had one done December 2nd last year.
Hmm.
Everything was fine. I spoke to the GI afterwards who performed the procedure, and she said, you know what? I'm going to prescribe the strongest PPI available. And so she did. I took that. That didn't help either. Nope. And I didn't tell my nurse practitioner this, so if she ever watches this, she's gonna find out. Um, I decided to get an MRI. And to get an MRI in Canada, well, first of all, it has to be approved by your doctor.
Hmm.
And secondly, if she did approve it, it would be, I don't know, 2, 4, 6 months before I got an MRI. So I thought,
Right.
forget this. I'm gonna go to Buffalo and get it done. And within 2 weeks, I had the MRI scheduled. It was December 8th
Okay.
from my initial call. And they did it right there. Like they did the MRI, on all my organs because I was scared that maybe it was pancreatic cancer that I had. So, and afterwards, I met with the technician. He went over the results with me. He said everything was fine. I don't see anything. So that, allayed my concerns a bit.
Good.
Yeah. So I, I, yeah, so that was that. Then, as I mentioned earlier, that my symptoms did not abate at all. Like they were just even after the MRI, I still had strong burning in my throat and my mouth, tongue. And I did everything. I changed my diet, didn't eat things that created more acid. I stopped drinking caffeine. I started, sleeping on an incline. I started chewing my food more so it would help with digestion. I made sure that I didn't eat anything 4 hours before I went to bed.
Right.
That didn't help. That didn't help. Then I even went on a really strict diet to help reduce the inflammation in my body because I thought maybe it's inflammation related.
Right.
So no, no gluten, no dairy, potatoes, tomatoes, bananas, nuts for 2 months. And then I had to reintroduce everything slowly. And after that, I found out that I had no allergies, no intolerances or insensitivities to any food
Awesome.
whatsoever.
That's great.
So, yeah, so now I'm back to eating everything and anything. So I have to watch my weight now. So I, you know, I just felt so broken. I felt so desperate to fix myself. I probably did most of the 11 mistakes you say not to do.
Right.
And so, of course, to fix myself, what did I do? I did a lot of online research. I watched a lot of different YouTube videos on the subject of GERD, because that's what I thought I had.
Right.
I watched videos on meditation. Maybe that might help me. Mindfulness, maybe that might help me. Mind body, or mind gut connection. Read a lot of books on that, researched that. I also participated in a cognitive behavioral therapy program and also saw a psychiatrist again for a few months. I don't know. I was just beside myself. I just didn't know what to do. And all of a sudden, Dr. Sarno popped into my head. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to reread his books. So I did just that. And I started journaling. Started journaling everything that was emotional, whether it was in my past or current. I just journal, because that's part of his recovery program.
Right.
And December of, yeah, so December last year, January, no, where am I now? Uh, yeah. So anyway, this pain just wouldn't go away.
Okay.
Um, oh yeah, December. December, we normally drive to Naples, Florida every year, and we normally leave on Christmas Day because traffic was a lot better. But because I wasn't feeling very well, I said to my husband, let's not leave on Christmas Day. And then a couple of days later, I thought, what the heck? I'm not doing this. I'm not going to stop living my life.
Right.
So I said, you know what? We're going to drive to Florida. We left on December 28th instead of the 25th. But the night before, I woke up in the middle of the night and I had this severe pain in my chest.
Okay.
And I calmed myself down. I just said to myself, you know what? It's just anxiety. It won't hurt me. It will pass. And I just kept repeating, and it subsided. Woke up the next morning at 1 o'clock because we leave early to drive to Florida. And we left. And, 2 hours before getting to the US Canadian or the Canadian US border, I started to what if? What if we cross the border and my symptoms get worse and I end up in the hospital? I don't have any health insurance because it won't cover any pre-existing condition.
Right.
So I had all these what ifs. So I said, David, you know what? Because I started feeling the pain again because I started having these what if thoughts. So I said, David, let's go to emergency. We happened to be driving through London, Ontario, which is a big city.
Right.
And so we stopped by the hospital, and the doctor ran some blood work and some x-rays to check to make sure I didn't have a heart attack. Everything was fine. He didn't know what it was. We left the hospital, and David said, uh, I think we should go home. I don't think you're well enough to travel. Let's go home. And I said, no, I'm a very determined person.
Right.
I said, no, we're going to continue. We're going to continue. Well, I think that's what got me through this too, is my determination. Anyway,
Sure.
so I said, we're getting through this. We're going to go. We're going to go. Let's carry on. Let's not um,
Mhm.
stop. So I just want to note right here that when all the stuff started in October last year, all my other symptoms disappeared. My back pain, my plantar fasciitis, my uh, numbness in my right calf, my Raynaud's
Raynaud's.
syndrome, yeah, Raynaud's syndrome, headaches, all disappeared. And correct me if I'm wrong, is that the imperative, the
Symptom imperative.
symptom imperative
Could
that
be.
doc
You had something that was more concerning to your brain, and the other things were not as scary, or didn't the brain didn't perceive it as dangerous, so they settled down.
that's exactly what happened because this burning that was happening, it scared me to bits. So, well, we got to Naples and I felt the same, but I carried on. I didn't let it affect what we were doing. But then it got a little bit worse, and David said, we're flying home. So we flew home on January 17th this year. And I went to see my nurse practitioner again, and she said, I said, you know what, these PPIs are not doing anything for me. So she said, let's stop them. So stopped cold turkey. And I also said, you know what? All my symptoms, most most of the time, appear in my throat, my mouth, my tongue, and sometimes on the outside of my face. I said, I'd like to go and see an ENT. So she made an appointment for me to see an
Right.
ENT because I wanted to rule out, and I can't say this, it's LPR, but I don't know how to say that. Laryngeal, I don't know how to say it.
Right.
LPR, which is just like acid reflux in the throat rather than in
Mhm.
the esophagus. So I stopped the PPIs within a week. My stomach was burning. So I called her and she said, oh, you know what? Go back on the PPIs. Okay, so I'm back on the PPIs. Um, then, you know, I I remember prior to coming home, I was sitting on the couch in our home in Naples. And my husband went to bed. It was 11 o'clock at night. And I thought, I'm just going to go on my iPad and start looking at stuff. And guess what I came across? I came across a video called Is Acid Reflux TMS? And it was you.
Okay.
It was you. And I watched the whole thing and I felt better afterwards because you answered a lot of my questions and you made me feel safer. So that helped me a little bit.
Good.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Dan. So then we flew back to Florida with my son and his family because we had arranged a 4-night cruise from Fort Lauderdale. And 3 days before we left on that cruise from Naples, for some reason, I decided to look up videos on fear and anxiety. And what did I come across? One of your videos on fear and anxiety.
Awesome.
Yeah. And that helped me somewhat in that I learned that my body was not broken and that fear made my symptoms worse. So I dialed down the fear. And by doing that, when we were on that cruise, I enjoyed a brief respite from my pain and symptoms. Brief, but at least it was a breakthrough.
And proof also.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I kept watching your videos, your daily videos. I went back and watched the old ones. On March 23rd, oh, I forgot to mention that when I spoke to my nurse practitioner in January about going off, and then I did go off and then went back on, I tried going off again under my doctor's care. And so I was completely off my PPIs on March 23rd this year. And on March 26th is when I had my ENT appointment. He checked me and he said, "There's nothing wrong with your throat." He said, "I know of a dentist who specializes in burning mouth syndrome. A couple of my patients have the same symptoms as you, and she's helped them out."
Okay.
And he said, "Would you like for me to make an appointment?" And I said, No." And my husband, who is all into mind body stuff, said, "No, I think maybe you should go and see her, see what she has to say." And I thought, "Oh, okay, sure."
Hmm.
So in June of this year, because I was feeling better, I canceled that appointment. It was actually it was scheduled for October 17th, the next month, but I canceled it in June because I knew that all my symptoms were created by the brain um,
Perceiving danger.
receiving danger. Thank you, receiving
Right.
danger, and that it wasn't anything physical. It was all my brain
Hmm.
doing this to me. So then I wasn't feeling 100, I wasn't feeling close to 100%. I was still having these burning sensations around this area.
Sure.
And it was very uncomfortable, but I persevered and I did what I had to do. I did things that I loved and did things I had to do around the house and stuff like that. But I felt I needed more additional or more support. So I joined your group. I joined your group in April and May this year. I only stayed for 2 months because I felt that that was the right amount of time for me.
Sure.
But what I liked about it was the hands-on um, experience, I guess, or conversation with you, with the other members of the group. I felt that I wasn't alone in my journey.
Right.
I really enjoyed the other members expressing or sharing their success stories from the week before. And that's what I like. Like at the beginning of every session, you say, okay, who can share their success stories? And I like that because a lot of people were feeling better. And I thought, wow, that provided hope to me. And if they
Of
can
course.
feel better, I know I can recover fully too.
Yes.
So thank you for your sessions, Dan, because they helped.
My pleasure.
And then in May, my husband went to Amsterdam on another business trip. And about 3, 4 days prior to him leaving, I started to have sleep issues. And I have always been a good sleeper. And there were 2 nights I didn't sleep at all. I just laid in my bed with my eyes closed and I was up the whole time. But of course, it was the fear that made it feel worse of not being able to sleep. Started to have what if thoughts. What if I never fall asleep? Can I die from this? On and on and on. So I, get on the computer, look up, has Dan made any videos on insomnia? Oh, yes, you did. And so I watched it a couple of times. I implemented what your advice. I took your advice. I did everything you said to do. And within a week, I was back to sleeping normally. Thank you for
Love it.
that.
Love it.
Yeah. So the latter part of May and June, I started to feel much better, much, much better. And I've actually written out a list of the things that helped me get to this
Okay.
in my life. So I'm going to review them if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So the most important thing that I had to learn, and Dr. Sarno said this, and you've said it as well, that I had to fully accept, I had to fully believe in my gut. It couldn't just be a fleeting thought. It had to be a gut feeling that no matter how severe my symptoms were, how widespread they were,
Hmm.
that I knew that they were caused to the brain perceiving danger. I
Right.
knew that. I wholeheartedly committed to feeling that. And that was the start of my journey in getting better. Because as he stated many times in your videos, that you've got to believe it, otherwise you're not going to make any progress.
The clarity
So
really
it,
matters. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, yeah. So I had to master this before I could get better. The second thing that I have done is I learned to teach my brain that I am safe. And I did that by giving myself consistent messages of credible evidence of safety every day, not in thoughts, but in actions.
Right.
So I would do what I love, no matter whether I was hurting. I would do the things I had to do, like housework and gardening and all that stuff,
Right.
regardless of whether I was hurting. I canceled medical appointments. I don't go to the chiropractor anymore. I tell my brain that I'm fine, that my symptoms are benign. I started listening to music again. I started watching funny like comedies. I laugh more.
So,
I I I don't believe or take my negative thoughts seriously. That helps a lot.
mhm.
I practice mindfulness, and this is something else that you've said, um, Dan, that you, when you have negative emotions, to take a time out and to actually feel them without judging yourself or repeating the story in your head,
Mhm.
and the feelings will pass. They do pass.
Mhm.
I'm still trying to master that. I'm doing it as things come up in my life.
Right.
Uh, it does help. It does help. And
Okay.
most importantly, I've gotten to the point of feeling indifferent and unconcerned, and
Beautiful.
that helps. The other thing I do is before I get out of bed each day, I go over my list of things that I'm grateful for. And I also say to myself before I get out of bed, I've decided to have a great day today, no matter what happens.
Awesome.
And so all that's helped me to where I am right now. I'm 100% better. The symptoms do reappear once in a while, but I just go back to basics. I stay calm. I reassure myself that my body's fine. I talk to my brain and say, I know what you're doing, I'm not in any danger, so I don't hurt.
Right.
I've got this. I'm good. I'm safe, secure. I'm actually okay. Some of your words, most of your words, Dan, and they
Right.
help
I
me.
recognize some of them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're your words, and I hope I'm not
No,
going to
no,
get in trouble for plagiarizing your words.
no, not at
But
all.
but
Not,
anyway, um, I owe a lot to you. I really do.
thank you.
You've, yes, I, I appreciate the amount of time that you've put into making all these videos. You've been doing it for the past 5 years. I
Mm.
still follow you. I can see the passion in what you do. I can hear it in your voice. I can see it in your body language, and I can see it in your actions by making these videos, always updating yourself. You're always learning new stuff and sharing it with the members or with the people that follow you.
Mhm.
I'm getting a little bit emotional right now.
Quite all right.
Because I feel so good. I feel fantastic, and you put me on the right path, and I appreciate that. So thank you for all
So,
your hard work. Keep it
yeah,
up.
just to clarify, so the back pain, the symptoms blamed on the reflux. Could you actually sense the reflux, or was it just the pain in the center of your shoulder blades? And were you sure it was reflux? Because usually you can kind of tell that more on the chest. I don't know about the back. So, but to your knowledge, all that's resolved, the mouth symptoms. Did you have ever any um, distortion of your sense of taste, or was it just the pain?
You know what? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the taste. And it's part of because I read up on this, the burning mouth syndrome. I looked it up and all the symptoms that it listed, I had. And
Mhm.
yeah, it leaves this bitter taste in your mouth sometimes, not all the time, but it
The reason
does.
I'm asking is I've got a member in the group who is dealing with both mouth pain as well as a distorted taste. The mouth pain has gotten better because he's not as afraid of that, but the taste is really freaking him out.
Mm,
So, I wanted to ask and see if that was there. So the taste has returned to normal as well?
yes,
Okay. So my interpretation of that is when you taught your brain that I'm not sick, I'm not broken, I don't have this horrible reflux, chewing up my mouth and digestive system, and like you just decided, this is all coming from the brain perceiving danger. These were false alarms, and your brain turned off all these alarms, and now you feel great. If symptoms
yes,
show up, you know what to do about it. You call it out for what it is. You remain calm, and the symptoms go away reasonably quick. They don't become chronic again.
yes. I believe to this day that I never had acid reflux at all.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. It was not acid reflux. No.
No. Well, that's beautiful. And how about the diverticulitis? Is that the gut symptoms have all resolved as well?
Yeah, yeah. I was diagnosed. Actually, I had the CT scan last year and they said that I had diverticulosis,
Right.
but I found out 4 years prior to that during my colonoscopy. I didn't have the results of that colonoscopy. I was diagnosed with that 4 years previously. So I've never had any type of bowel issues at all until last year, August. And then my GI said it's not diverticulitis, the infection part of that
Right.
condition. It was probably something you ate or a virus. So, I
A lot of false alarms from the medical world too.
yeah, yeah,
Misdiagnoses, if you will.
yeah. And I just follow what my nurse practitioner said, just to eat a high fiber diet, and I've been feeling great.
I love it.
Yeah,
Uh, so long journey, lots of years, but it's amazing when you get the accurate information and when you accept it. You didn't at first. You read Sarno a long time ago. You didn't
mhm,
really do too much with it, but
yeah,
something was like, "Hey, come on, Barbara, go back and read that again." And that kind of opened you up to, well, maybe something else is going on. There's an alternate explanation for everything you were experiencing, and you had enough intuition to start to connect the dots and say, well, this makes sense to me. And
that's
so
exactly it.
that's
That's exactly
beautiful.
it. Yeah.
Um, Anything else you'd like to add as far as, what would you recommend if you had a friend sitting across from you and they were struggling? What would you tell them?
See, Dan.
Watch
Well,
the end. But it wasn't just watching me, it was implementing the concepts.
yeah, 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 yeah.
So
I
I like to make that very clear. Watching videos is not the solution.
no,
Implementing it, making it your own, basically incorporating that into your belief system and your lifestyle, and your life is just, oh, symptom, I don't need to panic. I know what's going on. I'm going to reassure and stay calm, and symptoms can go away.
yes,
So that's
absolutely
brilliant.
correct. Yeah. And I just want to make one comment. Um, I want to thank my husband of 45 years for supporting me through this entire journey.
That's awesome.
On one hand, if he wasn't there, I'm sure I would have gotten through it anyway. But the thing is, by having him there, it made it a lot easier for me
Of course.
with his support. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate everything he's done for me. I couldn't
That,
have done. I
that,
could have done it without him, but not.
oh, you never know, and you don't have to know. The good
Right.
news is you appreciate him. I hope he knows that. Um, and so you did wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Yeah,
I
no,
hope I can help others with my story.
I appreciate it. I love the story. You've had a number of symptoms. I'm glad they're all resolved. Um, so you've been wonderful. So I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It'll probably be several days, maybe a week until this publishes, but keep an eye on the Facebook and the YouTube channel, wherever you typically watch me. And Yeah, once again, I really want to thank you. This has
Thank
been
you.
my pleasure, and I'm really glad to share your story with the audience. I'm sure somebody will be very inspired by it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Barbara. Take care. If
Take
you ever need
care.
anything, reach out to me.
I will. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.